There are essentially two different monitoring modes to work with inside Pro Tools. When you work in input-only monitoring, this is by going underneath the Tracks menu, you choose Input-Only Monitoring, then you're able to listen to only the input, strictly by what it says. So all regions on record-enabled tracks are not even heard, even during playback. The way to see if this mode is turned on or off is by looking at your transport. You can see right in your transport you have a green indicator. You can also see at the top whether your green indicator is on right here at this main transport at the top. So I can go in and do Option K to switch this, or Option K to turn it off. Now the second monitoring mode is called Auto Input Monitoring. This again is underneath the Tracks menu and you use the Option K. But what this does is it monitors playback of record-enabled tracks until you are going in to record. Then you monitor the live input. There is a problem with this mode when you're working in standard default record mode. We will discuss how to get around this slow switching issue later on in further video lessons. But for right now, I want to show you these two different modes in Pro Tools. So if we go into Pro Tools, create a new track, let's go ahead and label this dialog. I'm going to Shift R to set up the record. I'm going to pull up my transport right now so you can see that Option K switches between input versus auto. So let's just do input right now. If I hit play, you can see I'm still seeing the input no matter what. So let's go ahead and do a recording here. So this is great for doing your first initial recording. You're not doing any punch-ins, you're not doing any fixes, you're just simply recording the signal coming in. Now let's say I'm trying to fix an area. I need to go and fix this area and do a punch-in. Well, in order to do that, I need to go into my transport and I can click on my pre-roll and my post-roll, which allows me to go in and simply use the Option key before and after a selection. These are these little orange flags up here at the top. Typically you use these when you're working with punches, but not necessary. You'll see as we get into further record modes why. But right now, if I hit play, it's going to play the pre-roll, and then it's going to go into the playback or the record area, and then use the post-roll. So let's go into record, and you'll see what the problem is here. I'm still only hearing the input. When I get into the selection, it goes into record, but I don't hear the post-roll. So this is where the monitoring mode needs to switch. So let's do that example again. I'll Apple Z. I'm going to do Option K, and this allows me to do the monitoring. So this is great for doing your first initial recording. Then I can switch right into record. But notice what happened there. On the post-roll, you didn't hear what was on the track. So this is a problem. This is the slow switching that I was just discussing right here. The reason this happens is because Pro Tools has to reallocate a voice from playback into record, and then from record back into playback on the post-roll. And this takes time to go through the buffers, and it's just not a great method for punching in and fixing material on a track. So I really don't recommend using your standard default record mode with your pre-post rolls set. Now, what we're going to go ahead and do now is go into an image here just showing the differences between the two. You can see that on input-only monitoring, you only hear the input. You can't hear the playback of the track. Whereas auto input, you hear the playback until you go into record, then you're hearing the input. And then when it switches back, for instance on the post roll, if you're using the proper record mode, you will hear the playback of the material. So this is great for being able to hear the reference of when you're going into record. So the beginning, the record, and the end are heard in reference with each other. So now let's talk about linking record and playback faders. If you go into your preferences, you're able to link these two together or unlink them. So by default, if you go into your preferences and you go into your operations tab, you'll see right here it says link record and playback faders. It's always turned on when you first install Pro Tools. So for right now, if I turn this option off, then you can see what happens when I go into my mixer. I can set my record fader to be at this level, and I can set my playback fader to be at this level. So now they are two different levels. I don't recommend this because, for one thing, when you're setting up headphone cues or cue sends for the artist in the vocal booth or in the studio, you don't want to be able to turn on a record enable on a track and all of a sudden things get very loud in their headphones. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense, even if you had pre-fader sends, which we'll talk about later on. It's just not recommended. Plus, you're going to learn how to do a lot of different techniques later on in the mixing lectures as far as controlling the levels of your recorded signal path versus the playback path. So you have a little bit more edge on what's going on as far as the signals coming in. It's always important to kind of have a nice hot signal coming in your monitoring environment so that you know exactly what's coming in instead of it being washed out by the other playback tracks. So typically you are setting those up on two different signals so that you can control them separately while you're in record, and we will discuss that later on. So hopefully that helps you guys understand the difference between input versus auto. But remember the quick key for that, it's very popular. It's Option K with the green indicator showing at the top, which is input. And if you hit Option K again, you're in auto input monitoring.